Getting a professional sounding vocal can be one of the most important tasks for you as a music producer or a mixer. As listeners, we tend to have a very special relationship to the vocal through lyricism, storytelling, the emotions and expression, and also their unique tone. In order to captivate the listener, your vocal needs to be easy to hear, have a consistent level, and there might be plenty of scope for you to play around with achieving the perfect timbre through processing, as well as a scope of creative effects. In this video, we'll be giving you 10 key tips to achieving a professional vocal sound, and we'll be mixing a song together by Marcus Khan called 30 Days, and we'll be taking this dry vocal.
I didn't want our love to fall out of place. To less than 30 days, well, darling, in your case.
To a fully finished track.
I didn't want our love to fall out of place. To less than 30 days, well, darling, in your case.
Before we begin, in this video we'll be using Nectar for RX10 and audio lens, and I'm also using a few effects from Guitar Rig 7 and Neoverb, so head on over to the links in the description box below to download the free trials of these plugins, or you can also try out Music Production Suite 6 that includes all of them and many more creative effects and audio processing tools. Now that you have these plugins downloaded, let's get into the rest of this video. Before we get into the mix, I actually wanted to touch on a couple of things that I think are very crucial for achieving a great quality vocal that will then be way more enjoyable and fun to mix later on. And number one is getting a good vocal performance. As a vocalist, you will perform your best when you feel your best. So before your recording session, make sure you get plenty of rest. Make sure you are well hydrated and that you are warmed up properly so you can carry on through the rest of the session consistently and smoothly without potentially damaging your vocal cords. I would also recommend consistent practice in the days, weeks, or months leading up to your recording session. And while you practice, record yourself, even if it's just on your phone. It will get you used to listening back to your vocal and also being in a recording situation. And it will make you more objective about your voice. So by hearing yourself back, you will start to pick up on the things that you are doing really well and that sound great, and maybe a few things that you want to change. And both are equally as important to recognize about your voice. So you need to know when you've given a good performance, and you need to know what it sounds like when things could be improved. Whether you're recording yourself or are working with an engineer, make adjustments to ensure that you are actually comfortable and you can hear yourself well through your headphones, that your headphone mix is sounding great, etc. So don't be afraid to speak up and let the person recording you know that there may be something that you want to change or adjust. And equally, if you're recording by yourself, experiment with what works for you in a recording situation. Some people like to record with one headphone off, for example, so they can still hear their voice in the room. Some people don't. You might want to have some reverb in your headphones, for example. So just make those adjustments to ensure that you're comfortable and you can perform well. As an engineer, while the studio might be your home environment, for a lot of people it's a very intimidating space to be. So try to be the kind of person that makes other people feel comfortable to experiment and really perform to their best. Don't be afraid to give constructive feedback. It's actually often very appreciated and shows that you actually care about representing the vocalist that you're recording the best and making sure they come across great on the record. Try to find a way to do that with kindness and lots of encouragement, and making sure that they know that you're on their team and you want to make this vocal recording as good as it possibly can be. Allow plenty of time for your vocal recording session and plenty of time for adding little vocal harmonies. You'd be surprised how many of those actually come into your mind during a recording session, and it's great to have the scope for that experimentation and for layering things up. So make sure that the artist has the time to take plenty of breaks as and when they need to, and that anything that might help their vocal performance is provided for. Tip number 2 is choosing the right recording equipment for the vocalist. So for this song, we actually did a vocal mic shootout before we started recording. This is because we really wanted to nail the vocal tone that we were going for. And we tried 3 different mics. We tried a Shure SM7B, a Neumann U87, and a Lewitt LCT940. And this is what they sounded like.
I didn't want our love to fall out of place. Took less than 30 days, well, darling, in your case. I didn't want our love to fall out of place. Took less than 30 days, well, darling, in your case. I didn't want our love to fall out of place. Took less than 30 days, well, darling, in your case.
Now for this song, we actually chose the Lewitt LCT940, but you can really hear the difference that the right equipment can make to your vocal recording even before you've started mixing. Every voice is unique, so the right mic for a vocalist might not be the same across the board. As well as this, you can try different recording locations. For example, if you're recording at home, is there a room in your house that sounds the best, or is there some acoustic treatment that can help you out? You can also play around with things like hardware and different preamps, or even just simply get to know the plugins that you're working with, so when it comes to mixing, you know exactly what to reach for particular sounds. Okay, so now for step 3, we are diving into your vocal mixing session. The first thing you would do here is comp your vocals. Comping is the process of merging different takes of your vocals into one killer performance. So you'll likely ran the song through several times, or you maybe recorded section by section and you have different versions of each section. So comping is just the process of merging those together into one main vocal take. And here the best is subjective. It depends on the vibe and energy and the emotions of the song. So it might not always be the most pitch perfect take that makes the cut, but maybe a take that has some really endearing imperfections and vulnerabilities that might suit the energy and the emotion of the song best. So keep that in mind as you are creating your comps. This is also a great time to make any edits that you need in terms of timing, aligning your harmonies, and you will likely end up with a few different vocal tracks of takes that were good but maybe didn't make the cut for the main vocal, so you can use these for doubles and creating vocal stacks. Next, we want to get rid of any noise that might be causing issues later on. And the reason that we're doing so much editing at this stage is that later on we'll be adding EQ, compression, different effects. So these might exaggerate some of the noises and problems that might be occurring with our initial audio, but you also might get desensitized to some of these issues as you carry on with mixing, and you might either forget that they're there or just not notice them as much, but other people might. Unwanted noises can happen for any number of reasons. So we've just finished our vocal comping. There might be some clicks and pops that come in from there, so you might just want to sort those out with a few fades. There might be some electrical hum or any kind of noise coming from the equipment that you're using. That sometimes happens, and you don't want that to ruin a perfect vocal take. There might be some background noise going on, or maybe someone moved during their vocal performance. So reach for RX10 to intelligently clean up any unwanted noises from your audio, while also remaining very transparent and protecting that great vocal performance and recording. RX10 has various audio repair modules, so one of my favorites is voice denoise. I've actually used it before to clean up a little bit of hum on a vocal recording, and it was incredibly transparent and did not really affect the vocal take, which was otherwise great. And I also often use mouth declick for any mouth and lip smacking noises that you might want to minimize and might want to reduce entirely.
Took less than 30 days, well, darling, in your case. Maybe waiting for you or a small mistake, and now those 3 words can never be erased. Took less than 30 days, well, darling, in your case. Maybe waiting for you or a small mistake, and now those 3 words can never be erased.
Or you can also use the Nectar for Tame Noises feature. With the auto level mode, it will adjust for any non-sung vocal parts while still keeping your main vocal clean and balanced.
Heart is fragile as glass. I never thought that we would last. Heart is fragile as glass. I never thought that we would last.
Next, we're going to apply some pitch correction. So pitch correction is not just for a vocal that is really out of tune. You might want to just tighten certain parts of your vocal. So for a more surgical approach, I like to use plugins like Melodyne. That allows me to go into every single note and adjust it to the nearest cent, or use the pitch module in Nectar 4. Here you can adjust the strength and speed of your pitch correction, as well as setting it to a specific scale or creating a custom scale, and this is a great solution for really quick pitch correction or even some creative effects.
I never thought that we would last. These memories were built to be the past, and all because it happened so damn fast.
Now that we have nailed the vocal performance, we have edited all of our vocal takes, we get to the most exciting part where you can sit back and let an assistant take care of the rest for you. Well, not really, but Nectar 4 does feature an AI assistant that can get you off to a great start in mixing your vocals. It will identify the type of vocals you're working with, whether they're sung, rapped, or spoken words, and then it will provide you with different solutions for vocal processing and creative effects chains, depending on the type of vocal you're aiming for.
And now I don't know where we're heading. And now I don't know where we're heading.
One of my favorite features within Nectar 4 is that it's integrated with Audio Lens. So Marcus gave me very specific references for this song, and all I needed to do is play it on a streaming service, pull up Audio Lens and select a cappella mode. In the a cappella mode, it will isolate the vocal for me and capture the EQ characteristics of that reference vocal.
I didn't want our love to fall out of place. Took less than 30 days, well, darling, in your case. I didn't want our love to fall out of place. Took less than 30 days, well, darling, in your case.
Now, we already started with some EQ suggestions that Audio Lens and Nectar 4 gave me, but we're going to build on this and we're going to add EQ for more clarity. EQ is a great tool to help us add some clarity and presence to the vocal by attenuating any problem frequency areas and also boosting certain areas to ensure that it stays clear, upfront, and present. EQ will also help us make sure that the vocal sits well with the other instruments in the track and is still cutting through the mix. Here, for example, Nectar 4 has already started with an EQ suggestion, including attenuating some of the low-end frequencies with a high-pass filter, or you could also use a low-shelf EQ to eliminate some of those bass frequencies that you don't really need in your vocals, and that can quickly add up for non-bass instruments and add some muddiness and lack of clarity into your mix. So I can easily change the type of EQ curves I want to work with, and I can also choose from tonal EQs like analog and vintage. By increasing the Q value of my EQ, I can create a very narrow frequency band and then sweep through the frequency range to help me find some frequencies that I want to really focus in on. Some frequencies might be creating some boxiness or muddiness into my vocal mix, and I can then simply attenuate them to ensure that the vocal is clear and present. Next, we are using compression, but first, do you compress before or after the EQ? Well, the answer entirely depends on you. There is no right or wrong here. Just keep in mind that by using EQ before a compressor, it will affect the results of the compressed signal. And what I really love is that within Nectar 4, you can simply swap the modules around and hear the difference that it makes depending on where EQ and compression is within your chain. A compressor will help us even out the dynamic range of our vocal by reducing the peaks and boosting the quieter sections so the overall level stays more consistent. It can also help us shape the vocal sound by setting our attack and release times. And what I really like about Nectar 4 is that I can also choose from different types of compressors, so digital, vintage, analog, or optical. And I will often use at least one of each in terms of EQ and compression, one of each usually for fixing any problems and cleaning up the vocal, and another usually to color the vocal or for more kind of tonal processing of my vocal. Now you can see here that I'm dealing with a very dynamic vocal, and by that I mean there is a big dynamic range within this vocal, so you can see the softer, quieter passages in the verses and the more emotive, louder passages in the choruses. So when we're dealing with very dynamic vocals, what can sometimes happen is the compressor has to work extra hard to even out the dynamics of that vocal. And it can lead to sometimes a natural, over-processed sounding compressed vocal.
I didn't want our love to fall out of place. Took less than 30 days, well darling, in your case.
So the way to fix this is vocal automation or vocal riding. This way I can adjust the volume differences across my vocal before it even hits the compressor, so then it gives me a smoother and more even result. Using auto level mode in Nectar 4, I can simply click learn and it will do all the vocal automation and vocal riding for me, rather than having to go in with volume automation curves or adjusting clip gain for some words that are maybe getting lost in the mix, or adjusting some of the peaks in the vocal. I can simply get Nectar 4 to do it for me, and it already sounds much smoother and more balanced.
I didn't want our love to fall out of place. Took less than 30 days, well darling, in your case.
As you can see so far, we've got quite far along in mixing our vocal. We're just using the same plugin and all the modules are contained within that. We're almost ready to get to the fun part of adding more creative effects, but one last thing that I wanted to touch on here is a de-esser. So again, there is no hard rule on where you should place your de-esser within your vocal chain, but do keep in mind and do pay attention to how it will affect different modules throughout the vocal chain. What a de-esser will do is essentially smooth out those harsh sibilant consonant sounds. And if I pull up the de-esser within Nectar 4, I can simply click on the ear icon and you can hear exactly what I am referring to. They're not that nice to listen to, and sometimes those sounds can come across really, really harsh. Sibilance usually occurs in the upper frequency range, so we can dial in the specific frequency range here within Nectar 4, and then we can set the threshold, so where we want the de-esser to react to those sounds.
Moments after you said goodbye, my eyes filled up with water, taking away my sight. Moments after you said goodbye, my eyes filled up with water, taking away my sight.
Now, when it comes to vocal effects, the possibilities are endless. But keep in mind that these vocal effects need to serve the song and the vibe that you're going for. So even though I have so much scope to play around with creative effects, I really wanted to keep them quite subtle here because that was the aim of the song we're going for. The first thing I did is I wanted to saturate my vocals and give them a bit more grit and texture. You can use the saturator within Nectar 4, and you can even use it in parallel by dialing in the mix sliders. What I wanted to do though is combine a few different saturators for a more dimensional saturation effect. So here I'm using color and dirt in Guitar Rig 7, and I'm dialing in a little bit of saturation for both. And then I'm also using the saturator in Neutron 4 because I can use it for just a specific frequency range where I wanted to add that little bit more grit.
I didn't want our love to fall out of place. Took less than 30 days, well darling, in your case. I didn't want our love to fall out of place. Took less than 30 days, well darling, in your case.
I also like to add doubling and harmony effects. We actually recorded some harmonies in the studio, but for doubling, I just took the main vocal take and used the voices module in Nectar 4 to create a doubling effect. What I really like about this module is that you can also create some harmonies from here. You can adjust their individual level, you can pan them around in the space, you can also apply a filter. Within that one plugin, you can add doubling effects and control their level and also add some width to your vocals as well.
Heart is fragile as glass. I never thought that we would last.
I added these doubles very subtly throughout the song, but only on specific phrases. So varying up some of your creative vocal effects is a great way to keep the listener engaged and interested, emphasizing certain words and emphasizing certain lines, and actually making sure that it's not just a static vocal mix throughout the rest of your song.
Heart is fragile as glass. I never thought that we would last. Heart is fragile as glass. I never thought that we would last.
Now, to process the vocal harmonies, again, I kept them quite low in the mix, and I used the backer module in Nectar 4, and this will give you AI synthesized kind of backer voices, which I really liked, and because they're quite subtle, they don't sound too electronic for the genre, but I liked the effect that it gave me.
Fall out of place, darling, in your case. Fall out of place, darling, in your case.
So I can choose from different vocal presets and also control the pitch, the formants, and the tuning of the vocal, dial in a specific level, and I can even create my own AI backer profiles by loading up my vocal recordings. Now let's add some space around these vocals. A great way to do that is in Nectar 4, you can add a reverb and a delay module and control the mix levels of those modules from there. But in this case, I wanted to use the reverb in Nectar 4 and blend it in with Neoverb, and also add some saturation after my reverb effects. So what I did was send my vocals to a bus. Bus processing is a great way to process a group of instruments or a group of vocals or a stack of vocal harmonies, so you're not having to copy and paste the same vocal chain onto several different tracks. You can just process them all together, and I can also vary up the levels of my vocal effects buses throughout the song, again keeping those creative effects, although subtle but still quite dynamic and changing throughout the song.
I didn't want our love to fall out of place. Took less than 30 days, well darling, in your case. Maybe waiting for you was my mistake, and now those 3 words can never be erased. I didn't want our love to fall out of place. Took less than 30 days, well darling, in your case. Maybe waiting for you was my mistake, and now those 3 words can never be erased.
And it's as simple as that. We have gone from a dry vocal to a mixed vocal track. Now remember that your vocal processing chain might look completely different to mine depending on the genre that you're working in and the vocal you're starting with, and also the type of sound that you're looking to achieve. So don't be afraid to experiment with lush reverbs and delays and adding distortion and heavier saturation, maybe chopping up some of the vocals and processing those as individual samples. You can also try creative effects like vocal synth that will have lots of vocoder effects and kind of more computerized harmony effects. You can even apply stutters and modulations to your vocals, or apply chorus effects, which you can also find in Nectar 4. So really the possibilities are endless, and and it's completely up to you how you use these vocal processing tools. Just keep in mind on what serves the song best, and also keep artist's vision, whether that's your own or the artist that you're working with, at the forefront, as I find that really important. Thank you so much for mixing these vocals with me today. Don't forget, we have plenty of mixing and production tips on iZotope YouTube, so don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on more music production tips and tricks.